Elizabeth, are they gonna see the screen behind me? They're gonna be able to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, Risa.
Wow.
You know, I think of myself as a sheep, not a very smart one. If I had wool, it probably wouldn't be worth very much. But I have a good shepherd, and life is good because of this. And it's okay. That's the lesson of John 10. If God wasn't sovereign, I don't think I could trust him with all the things I get into trouble over. A while back, for a long period of time, Jesus walking on the water really was intriguing me. You ever get something in your mind and you can't get rid of it? One day after work, I went home and I filled the bathtub with water. And for 10 minutes, I tried to figure out some way to get some tension between the water and my foot. I failed. I don't know how Peter and Jesus did it, but God is sovereign, and that's all that was needed. You know, Americans don't like to think about God being sovereign or anybody being sovereign. We are, by nature, exceedingly independent. Let me show you. Let's see if I can do this right. Nope, wrong way. No, is that the right way, Elizabeth?
No, next, other way. No, other
I'm
way.
going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Go down.
Yeah, go down. Keep going.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there you go.
Get close.
One more.
There we go. Don't tread on me. These are from before the Revolutionary War. We serve no sovereign here. You could walk downtown Massachusetts Street and buy these signs today. That's the symbol of our American independence. So in the few minutes I have tonight, I want to share with you some reasons why you want to submit to God and why it's a good thing. He's sovereign. See, and I've got some verses. We'll see if I can keep up with them. I'm sorry the titles are in red. If you have a hard time reading it, it's not because I didn't try. But anyhow, the first reason is sufficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you never think of yourself as being a sheep. Some of you think, that's a pretty good description of me. David in Psalm 144:7 said, Father, reach down from above, grab me, rescue me from the surging waters. He wasn't drowning in water. He was drowning in trouble. When I'm not enough, when the task is too big for me, I think of Deuteronomy 20. These have to be the strangest rules ever given to a military outfit. This is Moses telling Joshua, who's going to lead the Israeli army into the promised land and conquer it, what the rules for the army should be. Listen to some of the things he says. He said, Joshua, if your men have a new house, if they are afraid, if they have a new wife, send them home. Don't send them into battle, send them home. And then he says, if you are too few in number, if you're outnumbered 3-1, 10-1, don't worry about it. Your God is sufficient for you in battle. It's amazing. I want to say the next reason is rest. There have been and continue to be some really difficult things going on in my life. Maybe I shouldn't even be here tonight, but I am. I'm going to share with you. Jesus says, take my yoke and learn from me. And I love that part that says you will find rest unto your souls. He's not talking about sleep. If I get enough sleep, I can handle a lot of things. But what Jesus is talking about is real rest. Remember the story in Genesis 1 and 2 where God says, I've created everything and it's good, and now he rests. Well, that doesn't mean he needed sleep. He didn't need a vacation. He wasn't worn out. It meant that he was reigning. Where there is rest, where God reigns, there is real rest. You might get more sleep. You might do something that gives you an escape. You might throw up your hands and say, okay, I surrender, I don't care, do whatever you want to do, whoever you're talking to. But the only thing that really brings rest is letting God reign. Where God reigns, there is rest. And then there are perhaps some things you don't think about when we talk about the sufficiency and the sovereignty of God. And that is that He is just and He brings justice. You know, we say God is just, and then we ask Him 100 why questions. It's okay, He can handle us. He knows what He got into him. But if He wasn't sovereign, we couldn't trust Him with the answers. They wouldn't satisfy. A less than sovereign God might answer, if He can answer at all, well, I didn't realize that party was so important to you, otherwise maybe I could have stopped the rain. Or it'd say, oh, why shouldn't that kid have gotten sick? How is he any different than any other kid? But because we have a God who's sovereign, and we know we can trust Him, and He only does good, we get answers that encourage us to trust Him. Like, oh yeah, I needed you to know that you were loved and that you have friends more than you needed the weather to be good. Or how about, yeah, that girl with cancer, it's hard, but she's going to grow straight into me, and I will not leave her alone. Those are the answers we get that say we can trust God. I'm in finance in my work life, and many economic philosophies are based on the principle of limited supply or scarcity, reductionism. We're going to run out of oil, so we have to develop another source of energy. The world can't possibly feed everybody, so we have to stop having babies. What the Bible teaches is that if we recognize that He is God and we submit to Him, He says He's abundant. He can fix what we goof up. Now, I'm not suggesting wastefulness or carelessness. I believe we have a responsibility to each other, to the earth, to the world we live in, and we need to be careful. But what I am saying is that the God who can produce manna and quail for 40 years in the wilderness is not stymied because a family loves kids so much they want to have 6 of them or 12 of them. I have friends that have 15. He's not going to run out of water. What would He walk on if He did for us to drink? Think about God. Think about Jesus feeding the 5,000. Remember what it said? They all had their fill. They all had their fill. Yeah, Peter and John in the temple after their first, after the ascension, their first trip back to the temple. Lame guy sitting there by the temple gate. I don't have anything to give you, but Jesus of Nazareth, rise up and walk. You know, and He goes off walking and leaping and praising God. It's a God of abundance. Let me see, where am I? Oh, there we go. Kisses from Katie. That's a great missionary story. It's a typical American girl from Tennessee, 19 years old, graduates from high school, gets on a plane, literally 2 weeks after graduation, for Uganda to teach kindergarten at a missionary school. It's no surprise when after about 2 or 3 weeks she says, I realized I had nothing, absolutely nothing to offer those ringworm, lice-infected, dirty, shoeless children but love and the gospel. I mean, that's kind of nuts, isn't it? What those kids needed was food, water, housing, education. That's kind of become the American church mantra, is that we got to do all these things before the gospel. What the gospel brought those children was dignity, courage, hope. Living water flowed through them. And those kids started to change the community that they lived in. And And what they figured out was that even in broken, war-torn Uganda, their God was a God of abundance. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. And he tells us, you will have life and have it abundantly. That's our God, abundant. Oh yeah, God's holy. You may not know this, but God thinks a lot. And he thinks a lot about you. This is one of my favorite verses from Psalm 139. How difficult it is for me to fathom your thoughts about me, O God. How vast is their sum total. If I tried to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. I want to make it, oh God, I don't get you. Why do you bother with me? You know, you're too much. Well, he bothers because I'm a sheep, and he knows I can't do it alone, and he loves me, and he wants a relationship with me, and he can only do good. And it's like some days, I feel like he's waking me up and he's saying, come on, get your lamb brain into gear. I got an adventure for you today that you can't imagine how much fun we're gonna have. And I usually say, or how scared I'm gonna be, but okay, I'm getting with it. Last thing I want to share is that Jesus has overcome death. I have a good friend who is known for saying, heaven is my home, but I'm not homesick. And I want to say to him, Tony, you didn't understand what Jesus did. A couple of years ago, we'd had one of those, as again, Risa says, some of the older of you in the group have had these conversations with your younger children, you know, that end of life, what you're supposed to do with the family inheritance or the medical stuff, and my children are rolling their eyes back in their head as we're talking, and then my doctor daughter says, okay, let's have the pull the plug conversation. And without missing a beat, I said, if you get a chance to take me out of here, do it. And they kind of just stared at me with their jaws open. I mean, Jesus is in heaven. I can't wait to get there. Jesus is in heaven. So what happened between the cross and the resurrection was that death was destroyed. That death that keeps us from being with Jesus. That death that says, you can't be with me in the place I have prepared for you, has been destroyed. And we have the power of life within us. When we die, we don't go to that place of death alone. We might be afraid, that's okay. It's something we've never done before. But you won't be alone in it. And you won't go through the second death. You're going to be at the place that Jesus prepared for you. And I can't wait for that. So, he's sovereign over the universe, over our living and our deaths. And we have the abundance of God's goodness, and let's live in that abundance because God is sovereign. All I have to do is follow that risen Jesus. Just start to say yes. Okay, I'll jump. You know, I'm thinking while Sarah's up here dancing, the Holy Spirit is talking to some of you. Somebody else should be joining her. It's just time to just say yes. You're sovereign. You'll get me through this.